Number 10. Mr. Fear. Zoltan Drago was the owner of a failing wax museum who was trying to create a chemical that would bring his wax sculptures to life so that he could create his own private army. Unfortunately for him, his plan to have an army of wax celebrities would not come to pass because, you know, that's not how chemistry works. However, in his attempts, he did inadvertently manage to create a chemical that could be used to fill any foe with indescribable fear. So he said, meh, close enough, and he developed a gas gun that could shoot this formula, and he became Mr. Fear, presumably because Scarecrow was taken. He fought Daredevil a few times, making Matt have to live up to the moniker of the Man Without Fear. He was later killed by the villain Samuel Saxon, who took up the Mr. Fear mantle before he died and became the robotic villain Machinesmith. When this happened, Matt Murdock's rival from law school, Larry Cranston, became the third and current Mr. Fear. Number 9. The Jester. It's difficult to break into acting. It's a tough industry, as Jonathan Powers discovered. After years of struggling, the egotistical actor was cast in a production of Cyrano de Bergerac, but his performance was not well received, and he was booed by audience members, panned by critics, and fired after the show's opening night. After this, he decided to learn as many skills as possible to make himself a more versatile and hireable performer, taking up bodybuilding, gymnastics, and fencing, just to name a few skills. Perhaps due to his mammoth ego, he refused to take any actual acting lessons, and as a result could only find work on a children's show where he was constantly having pies thrown in his face. As all actors do, he eventually went insane, and with the help of the Tinkerer became the supervillain known as the Jester. He has gone on several bizarre crime sprees, such as when he used fake newscasts to convince people that JFK was alive and that the Vietnam War never occurred, which was probably written to be a goofy scheme back in the 70s, but in today's climate is just sad because it would probably work. He has tangled with Daredevil several times over the years, although he did retire for a time after successfully impersonating a famous actor named Benedict LaForge and performing the role of Cyrano on TV in Daredevil number 218. He actually did very well with the part, and this seemed to give him some much needed closure, although he did eventually return to a life of crime. Number 8. The Matador. Not to be confused with the Matador who fought Captain America back in the 1940s, Manuel Eleganto was introduced in one of Daredevil's earliest adventures, back when the hero was still garbed in his original yellow and red costume. His origin is very clearly laid out in a newspaper Matt reads in Daredevil number 5, so I'm just gonna pull a quote directly from there. For years, Eleganto was the most famous, most controversial bullfighter in all of Spain. His mastery of the bulls was unquestioned, but his cruelty and his brutality towards the bulls made the crowds hate him. In fact, in his last public appearance, the audience actually was heard to cheer for the bull. This so infuriated the temperamental Matador that he turned to hurl an epithet back at the cheering crowd. It goes on for a bit, but basically what happened is he got gored by the bull and blamed humanity, and decided to become a Matador-themed criminal. And by that I mean he would do stuff like stand in the street and throw his red cape at an armored truck's windshield, causing it to crash. Not exactly one of Daredevil's greatest threats.
Number 7. Circus of Crime. Fritz Tybalt, then manager and ringmaster of a small Austrian circus, became active in the Axis powers during World War II. He was asked by German intelligence to take his circus to the United States of America to give performances in major cities while actually using his circus members' powers and talents in order to take out government officials. Fritz Tybalt's evil circus of crime consisted of Omir the Snake Charmer, Tommy Thumb, the Trapeze Trio, and Zandow the Strongman. However, Tybalt, who came to be known as the Ringmaster of Death, was captured by Captain America. But fast forward, and the Circus of Crime's new MO was giving a performance to a large audience. Then the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members then robbed the audience, who would remember nothing about the thefts when the Ringmaster released them from the trance, and the performance continued. This criminal circus fought the Hulk, Spider-Man, the Hawkeyes, the Avengers, and others. Number 6. The UFOs. These villains and their cleverly chosen team names. UFOs, like UFOs, because they got their powers in space. Yes, of course. Someone get me out of here, please. Okay, the UFOs here, inspired by the powers gained by the Fantastic Four, went to great lengths trying to reproduce the same accident that gave those heroes their abilities. The attempt succeeded, but they were interrupted by Bruce Banner, who discovered their ground control facility and was able to bring the shuttle down, because he thought it had been exposed to the cosmic radiation by accident. They were none too happy, as they thought they could have been made even stronger if he had not interfered, and they displayed their newfound powers in a frankly pretty awesome fight with the Incredible Hulk, even if they lost. Vapor has the ability to alter her form into any known gas. Vector gained the power of telekinesis from cosmic rays. X-Ray has been permanently transformed into a living energy field with the power to expel forms of heavy radiation capable of hurting even the Hulk. Ironclad has been permanently transformed into organic metal steel. He has superhuman strength, durability, and the ability to decrease or increase his own weight. His fight with the Hulk literally shook the universe, which is super cool. You should probably check him out. Number 5, the Frightful Four. A second group inspired by the Fantastic Four. Yes, the Frightful Four also did not come up with a very clever name. The Wizard, the Sandman, and Paste Pot Pete, who all regularly did battle with the Human Torch and were defeated by him around the same time, realized that they all had unique powers and a mutual disdain for the Fantastic Four. The Wizard suggested that they form a group that would be the evil counterparts to the Fantastic Four. A great idea, but it's just 3 dudes. They need a 4th member to their group, and what do you know, the Wizard had heard of a strange woman hiding out on a remote island on the Mediterranean who had complete control of her hair. Traveling there, the Wizard convinced Madame Medusa to join their ranks. Now this Madame Medusa was actually Medusa of the Inhumans, as some of you may have guessed, but she was kept under the influence of the Wizard using a device that kept her memories forgotten to her. They made their first attack at Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman's engagement party, which is kinda just rude if you ask me. Number 4, Wrecking Crew. When Dirk Garthwaite, otherwise known as Wrecker, held onto his enchanted crowbar, he invited his 3 chums, ex-physicist Dr. Elliot Franklin, ex-Army Master Sergeant Henry Camp, and ex-farmhand Brian Kalusky to come and do the same in the middle of a thunderstorm. When lightning struck the crowbar, all 3 men were empowered, becoming Thunderball, Bulldozer, and Piledriver respectively, and coming together to be the villainous Wrecking Crew. These mystical strongmen were mainly an enemy to Thor, but they originally fought against the Defenders. This group has actually been around for a pretty long time and have battled many a superhero. The Fantastic Four, Avengers, Omega Flight, Spider-Man, the Thunderbolts, and even got into a fight between the Marvel and DC universes.
Number 3, Manbull. Bill Torrens was a common criminal working for the evil android Mr. Klein with his partner, Itch. He was tasked with kidnapping people so they could be used in Klein's experiments. When Daredevil intervened, Bill was forced by his employer to be a test subject. The experiment transformed him into a super-sized bull man named Manbull. Daredevil defeated him and he reverted to his human self, being sent to prison for his crimes. Itch later smuggled him in a revised formula which permanently transformed him into the Manbull and allowed him to escape from prison. He has teamed up with other Daredevil enemies such as the Owl and, ironically, the Matador, and has also fought heroes such as the Hulk and Scarlet Witch, but isn't a particularly well-known Marvel villain. He did, however, recently make the jump to live action when he appeared as a member of the Abominations group therapy session in the She-Hulk TV show. Number 2, Robert Goldman. Robert Goldman was a classmate of Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson at Columbia Law when they were all training to be lawyers. He would go on to become the assistant district attorney and was the lawyer who arranged the deal which allowed Daredevil to keep his secret identity in exchange for a guilty plea when he was on trial for murder. It was later revealed that he is actually Matt's guardian angel who has been manipulating the horrible events of Matt's life in order to make him a better hero. He has claimed responsibility for the death of Elektra's father, causing Matt's stint in prison and influencing Elektra's death at the hands of Bullseye. He also influenced and helped the FBI agent who revealed Matt's identity back in the Bendis run, sent Typhoid Mary to the Kingpin, and caused a train explosion that almost caused the death of Matt's girlfriend Kirsten McDuffie. This is a very recent development in the Daredevil canon, so we have yet to see how valid these claims are, or how much of an impact this villain will leave with readers, but their confrontation has certainly left the Man Without Fear shaken to his core. Number 1, Death's Head. The father of long longtime Daredevil love interest Karen Page, Paxton Page was a famous scientist who created a cobalt bomb. When he refused to sell the bomb to anyone, including the US government, he was called a traitor and became a recluse, living with his wife Penelope out in their creepy old mansion. He continued to experiment with the radiation and developed powers which allowed him to manipulate cobalt radiation, being able to form and throw fireballs at his enemies. He was driven mad and began dressing as a figure from Karen's childhood nightmares, wrapping himself in bandages and wearing a skull-like mask. He developed a formula which turned everything but the bones on his horse invisible and began haunting the grounds of his mansion like a Scooby-Doo villain. While fighting Daredevil in his secret laboratory, a vat of molten cobalt tipped over and almost killed his daughter. He regained his senses for a moment and pushed Karen out of the way, getting caught in the spill himself and killed. He was only featured in 2 issues of the comics, Daredevil Volume 1 issues 56 and 57, but given how things ended for his daughter, a story featuring him returning for revenge on Daredevil could be a lot of fun.
Number 10. The Red Barbarian. What better sign of the times than having an increasingly stereotypically generic communist Russian general as a villain? At least they gave him a unique name. The Red Barbarian was a general in the USSR Army named Andrei Rostov, and along with his generic name, he was generically evil, wore generic medals on his generic brown fatigues, and drank a lot of very generic Russian party beverages. The Barbarian never really even engaged Stark directly. He mainly sent incredibly generic spies to go and steal some generic plans from the guy. And to just add to the icing on the cake, when the one interesting spy, the actor, managed to actually succeed in his mission, Andrei didn't believe him and had taken him out. Andrei did not believe him and had him taken out. He eventually just became another generic Russian guy taken out by the Winter Soldier. What a waste. Number 9. The Freak. Some of you may be surprised to learn that the Freak was actually Iron Man's best buddy, Happy Hogan. In some earlier Iron Man stories, Happy Hogan accidentally absorbs a large dose of cobalt radiation thanks to the Unnervator. This made him several times more powerful, which I gotta let you know is not how that works. Please do not irradiate yourself for superpowers. It will not go well. Nevertheless, in this form, he could discharge blasts of cobalt energy from his hands, had superhuman durability and strength, even becoming bulletproof, and he continuously radiated lethal levels of radiation which could have resulted in a nuclear explosion. Unfortunately, he was also just cray with this power, turning him into the Freak. Iron Man chased him and managed to lure him to his factory where he tricked him into walking into a maximum power burst of the Innervation intensifier, hoping it would turn him back to Happy Hogan, which it did. Number 8. The Unicorn. The Unicorn suffers from having probably the least threatening of names, and honestly, when he first appeared in Tales of Suspense number 56 in May of 1964, Milos Masaryk, which is how I'm hoping you pronounce that, was just a Soviet agent assigned to security duty for a bigger bad, Anton Vanko, who eventually became the Crimson Dynamo. Dynamo's second finished project was a helmet with radiation beam weaponry called a power horn. Vanko offered this invention to Masaryk and taught him how to use it. So, yeah, the Unicorn was essentially another villain's lackey, but he did eventually get enhanced with superhuman strength and stamina, not to mention near impenetrable skin. He also eventually turned the helmet weaponry somehow into a third eye that can fire energy beams. It looked much cooler, I'll agree, but he was kinda crazy and he still kept on just being muscle for other villains, last of which would be Korvac.
Number 7. Stilt-Man. First appearing in Daredevil number 8, Stilt-Man was a scientist named Wilbur Day who stole the plans for a hydraulic ram device in order to create telescopic metal legs, which allowed him to tower above the people of New York as Stilt-Man. He used the power of being tall to attack the scientist, Carl Caxton, multiple times in hopes of stealing the scientist's shrink ray. On one of those occasions, he hoped to use the device to shrink the Golden Gate Bridge, but was defeated by Daredevil and Black Widow. Surprisingly, the ability to be tall has not made Stilt-Man an effective supervillain, and he has been defeated with relative ease by multiple heroes in the Marvel Universe. Number 6. Bushwhacker. Although he was originally a Catholic priest, Carl Burbank renounced his vows upon the death of several of his young parishioners. In what may just be the most extreme career pivot in history, he joined the CIA, where he got a cybernetic arm that he is able to transform into a gun. After leaving the CIA, he became a freelance assassin who specialized in killing his targets in artistic and aesthetically pleasing ways. He has fought against Daredevil and other heroes such as Wolverine and the Punisher, and has worked for a variety of employers including the Kingpin, the Hood, and the US Hulk operations. He's been a consistent presence in the Marvel Universe over the years, but is rarely the main villain, usually working as a pawn in a more prolific villain's schemes. Number 5. Ikari. During Mark Waid's excellent run on Daredevil, Bullseye was confined to an iron lung after being defeated by Daredevil. He had Lady Bullseye hire a new threat named Ikari to kill his rival. Bullseye had Ikari experimented on with the same toxic waste that gave Matt his abilities and had him trained to be just as effective a fighter as Matt. In their first encounter, Ikari lured Matt to a warehouse and confronted him dressed in Batlin Jack Murdoch's old robe and a costume modeled after Matt's original yellow and red number. They fought to a standstill, and Matt tried to negate Ikari's radar sense by turning on the building's sprinkler system, only to learn that although he had radar sense, he was not blind. He could have killed Matt, but he decided to let Matt live in fear of his eventual death at his hands. The two fighters got their rematch when Ikari was hired by the Kingpin to fight Murdoch to the death. Kingpin had Matt's loved ones kidnapped and informed Daredevil that if he won the fight, he would have one of his loved ones executed. Daredevil and Ikari fought for hours until the Shroud intervened and seemingly killed the assassin. The body disappeared soon after, but his severed head was later seen as a trophy in Kraven the Hunter's island hideout in Captain America number 697. Number 4. Black Wing. The son of the crime boss Silvermane, Joseph Manfredi learned how to train and control bats to do his bidding. This brought him to the attention of the villain Ringmaster, who offered Joe a position in his circus of crime. Joe accepted and created a very familiar looking suit that gave him limited flight abilities, and he began committing crimes with his trained mutant bats. Because the more obvious name had already been taken, he started calling himself Blackwing. The circus of crime came into conflict with Daredevil, who defeated them, capturing everyone but Blackwing, who managed to escape. He tangled with Daredevil a couple more times and also fought other heroes such as Black Widow, Captain America, and the Falcon before giving up the bat theme and becoming a regular crime boss like his father. Probably for the best, as his decision to straight up dress as Batman was a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Number 3. Controller. I don't know what it is about Iron Man, but so many of his villains, even the obscure ones, are actually really neat. Granted, some are just dudes in suits, but what's cool is that for the most part they are other scientists or regular dudes who elevate themselves to something more. Controller is a prime example. Basil Sandhurst developed himself an exoskeleton to allow him to move and function after a terrible chemical accident. But with this tech, he also developed the ability to siphon and use the mental energy of others to control them and read their minds. Eventually, this technological ability became one he just possessed on his own, and it's caused him to go up against some real heavy hitters, including different iterations of Captain Marvel. But he will always hold a feud against Iron Man, Tony Stark, for all the times the Golden Avenger has defeated him. Number 2. Arsenal. Arsenal may actually be known to Iron Man readers. Originally, Arsenal was actually a creation of Howard Stark, Tony's father. It was a prototype robot weapon created by Howard during the Cold War. Now there are actually two, Arsenal Alpha and Arsenal Beta, but we will mainly be talking about Beta. What makes this villain more imposing for Tony himself is the fact that Arsenal Beta's neural processors were based on Howard himself. Plus, he had a sophisticated guidance AI named Mistress, which was actually based on engrams of Tony's mother, Maria. Arsenal contains both Tony's mom and dad, huge influences in his life, making any battle with Arsenal a much more personal one. More recently, Howard and Maria, or Arsenal and Mistress, were both uploaded to Tony's Escape, and thanks to Arno Stark, they were even given human forms, but unfortunately they will never truly be Tony's parents. And in at number 1 is Madame Mask. Yes, I know she isn't really the most obscure, but she is cool as hell, and not everyone knows about Guiletta Nefaria. Nefaria, working under her father, Count Lucino Nefaria, became the leader of the massive Magia crime family, and in one of her first moments she actually attempted to infiltrate Stark Industries by charming Jasper Sitwell. Only, she actually ended up getting feelings for him and then got into an accident that disfigured her, which is when she got the golden mask that granted her the name Madame Mask. She has remained a villain to Iron Man for a long time, playing a bit more of a hands-on part, although behind the scenes in Dark Reign and Secret Invasion, which is where she developed a relationship with the villain, the Hood. She remained a decent level threat for a long time, even fighting including Moon Knight and Hawkeye, and there was also a point where she acquired a number of magical artifacts that gave her actual power outside of the magia. Thanks to her less than ideal relationships with Midas, Jasper Sitwell, Tony Stark, and her own father, plus her incredibly hard childhood and facial disfigurement, she is an incredibly compelling character with depth many other somewhat obscure villains just can't match. Number 10. The S-Men. Red Skull, being the dastardly devil he is, made some backup plans in the case of his eventual demise. One such plan was a clone of himself who would come back in the modern era. Okay, side note, why do villains do this, making clones of themselves? The individual villain still kind of passes away, so if they move their consciousness or something, that kind of makes sense, but I don't get why this is a thing. But I'm pretty sure this clone isn't even like that. I'm gonna make myself upset, so let's just continue. Basically, waking up in this new modern world with mutants and all that jazz, this new Red Skull decided that he was going to dig up the body of Professor X and steal some of his brain, granting himself some telepathy, and as an antithesis to the X-Men, he created the S-Men. Yes, very creative. This was a group of individuals that the Red Skull had empowered using crazy mad science and magic. Almost all of them were pretty quickly taken out of existence by Magneto when this Red Skull tried to make a camp to exterminate mutants. Bad move, buddy. Bad move. Number 9. Zodiac Cartel. Honestly, it's a pretty cool idea for a group. This villainous group of hand-picked business leaders who were all born under different zodiac signs, as their leader Cornelius Van Lunt, or Taurus, was heavily into astrology. Each member, while representing a zodiac sign, also was based in a different American city, and their main goal was world economic and political domination. Its members originally were, other than Cornelius, Scorpio, Jake Fury, Aquarius, Darren Bentley, Aries, Marcus Lassiter, Cancer, Jack Cleveno, Capricorn, Willard Weir, Gemini, Joshua Link, Leo, Daniel Radford, Libra, Gustav Brandt, Pisces, Noah Perricone, Sagittarius, Harlan Vargas, and my representative, Virgo, Elaine McLaughlin. The team was first formed after the dissolution of a previous group called the Great Wheel of Zodiac, which had covert agents from around the globe including Baron von Strucker, Dum Dum Dugan, and even Leonardo da Vinci. Its dissolution also led to the creation of S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, and Leviathan as well, so you could definitely say it was important and somehow still relatively obscure. Number 8. Headmen. Sometimes it takes the smallest of things to bring people together, and while that may sound like an extremely beautiful sentiment, I'm saying it in relation to the villainous team known as the Headmen, who it seems came together because each of their powers revolves around their heads in one way or another, and it's honestly kind of unsettling in my opinion. Bonded together through their heads, these scientists sought out world domination, bringing them into conflict with the Defenders, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. This quartet consisted of Arthur Nagin, their leader, who had his head transplanted onto the body of a gorilla, Ruby Thursday, who replaced her own head with an organic computer capable of changing shape, Gerald Morgan, aka Shrunken Bones, accidentally shrank his own skeleton, including his skull, so he basically has really baggy skin, and Chandu the Mystic's head has been transplanted by Nagin onto a number of different bodies throughout his time, making him quite versatile. Number 7. Mr. Doll. Look, sometimes Marvel had to get really creative in their earlier days. They were still figuring out what worked and what didn't. I'm not saying that Mr. Doll, aka Nathan Dawley, who appeared in Tales of Suspense number 48 in 1963, didn't work. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying actually. Yeah. The concept is actually quite a familiar one, almost like it's been done before by another comic book company. Dwarf Dolly came into possession of what was essentially a voodoo doll that could be shaped into whoever he intended the victim to be, and he got really good at reshaping it, using the doll to inflict pain on businessmen until they handed over their companies to Dolly himself. He came into conflict with Iron Man, and he did actually defeat the hero the first time, but we all know that isn't going to last, and somehow Iron Man used an energy blast to make the doll resemble Nathan himself, and the villain everyone's attack backfired. He then got his mind implanted into two mannequins who took themselves after the Brothers Grimm, and I don't think any of us were expecting that one. Not at all. Number 6. Gargantus. Gargantus was Iron Man's first real opponent after his origin story in number 39 of Tales of Suspense. For the follow-up, number 40, Marvel decided that his next adversary would be a gigantic robotic Neanderthal constructed by aliens who traveled to Earth 80,000 years ago. I guess these Goomba-looking aliens saw Neanderthals and thought that would make an excellent robot. And for those nearly 80,000 years, they didn't change the robot one bit, because when two of those aliens came to Earth in the modern day, they brought the club-wielding Gargantus with them to lead the attack. Now, he did have mesmerizing abilities, which he used to force the citizens of Granville to build a wall around the city. Unfortunately though, for Gargantus, one of those citizens had a literal date with Tony Stark, and so he went to investigate, eventually defeating the robot with incredibly powerful magnets that ripped it apart. Number 5. Spymaster. While other obscure villains tread into the realm of ridiculous and hilarious, Ted Calloway, or Spymaster, is just plain awesome. He has actually been a thorn in the side of Tony Stark, breaking into Stark Tower multiple times. In one arc, he was the one who put together a team of other underutilized Iron Man rogues, including our buddy Unicorn, and breaking into Stark Tower, stealing some of Stark's tech. He was even able to steal tech for Justin Hammer, which was the spark for the awesome Armor Wars story arc. He has eluded capture multiple times and even let the world believe he was passed away while he continued to operate in the shadows. Despite first appearing in 1971, he's just kind of always remained relatively unknown to the common audience member, and I think that's gotta change. Number 4. Dread Knight. Bram Velsing, for starters, has an incredibly strange name that is a very obvious reference to Bram Stoker and his character Van Helsing. But he is also not actually an Iron Man villain, not on Earth 616 at least. Bram Velsing, or Dread Knight, is really an enemy to Tony Stark in the Ultimate Universe. Unfortunately, in the 1610 universe, he just kind of becomes another Iron Man villain that creates an Iron Man-like armor. But in Earth 616, he is actually a Latverian scientist who didn't like Dr. Doom's schemes and was punished by having a mask fused to his face. He became kind of like a villain to Dr. Doom in a way, allying himself with Victoria Frankenstein and the creations of Victor Frankenstein. He has fought Iron Man on a few occasions in 616 as well, but he's also fought Black Knight and Spider-Man. And I mean, an armored up man with a cool mask wielding a super cool lance riding a black winged horse? It's actually pretty cool. Number 3. Menagerie. The Menagerie is likely a more recent evil team, showing up for the first time in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, number 1 in April of 2014, when they tried to steal valuable decorated eggs from an antique store and were pretty easily defeated. So like, from the get-go, the impressive feats are on the lower side of the list, if you know what I'm saying. In fact, I'd say the most famous thing they've done is when they disintegrated Spider-Man's spider suit, making him have to create web underwear for himself. And it's kind of the underwear that is remembered here, not the menagerie. The animal-themed criminal team was created by White Rabbit, and its members included Hippo, Ox, Skine, who did the spider suit disintegrating, Squid, Swarm, and, wait for it, Panda Mania. Nice. The Menagerie also is known for trying to rob a club where Nadia Van Dyne was celebrating her birthday with numerous other heroes, which, as you can imagine, it didn't go too well for them. Number 2. Death Throes. Remember how the headmen all came together based on their head-related powers? Well, I'll do you one better. How about the Death Throes, whose powers and names all have something to do with commonly throwing stuff? The ringleader, threw together teammates Bombshell, Knick-Knack, Oddball, Tenpin, and Throwdown into a group that works really well together, juggling their weapons between each other and doing battle with characters like Captain America, Crossfire, Hawkeye, and even Loki of all people, who stopped the group from robbing the big top casino in Las Vegas. The Marvel Wiki even lists their origins as quote-unquote joint effort to perform criminal and mercenary acts while using juggling expertise. I honestly kinda had a hoot putting together this point, as I can't believe this group of villains even exists. And lastly, at number 1 is Horticulture. Okay, of all the teams on this list, I think the Horticulture are my favorite. For starters, they look so cool. But then, you find out it's a bunch of older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists and want to bring Earth back to its more pristine time when it had about 7 billion less people on it. I just love how they use their regular names, and the names just kinda suit their age and interest in plants. I don't know how, but they kinda just do. Augusta Bromes, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vetiver. Gosh. But yes, that's right, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, specifically flowers. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men number 3. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of Horticulture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda, and they're also computer programmers, selling software to Orcus to monitor Krakoan gateways. But seriously, look at them. They're just awesome.